Hello everyone, welcome to the video number 62 in Selenium C# course. In this video, we'll discuss about what is data-driven testing and how to achieve this using C# Selenium and MS Test automation framework. The agenda of the video is what is data-driven testing, to know what are the different data sources we can use, what is DataRow Attribute and DynamicData Attribute. What is data-driven testing? Here, data is used to drive the test cases and suits from the external data feed. And that external data feed may be a XLS file, xlsx file, CSV file, XML file, and it can be a data taken from the databases. Let us take a scenario where data-driven testing is more relevant. Assume that we are verifying a form where it is having a first name, last name, and enrollment date. The first name and last name we can give in the uppercase, the lowercase, or title case. And the dates also we can start from first month, first of a year, or mid of the year, or end of the year. So we have to execute the test case against all this data. Instead of creating a test case for each type of data, we can create only one test case which will execute the same steps but with a different data. And the data will come from different data sources, and that test case will be executed against the application under test, and later we can verify the actual output against the expected output. So why do we have to do the data-driven testing? It allows the testing of the application with multiple sets of data. It separates the test case data from the executable test script, because the test data you are going to store it in a different data sources. Allows reusing of actions and functions in a different test. Even though the multiple test cases will execute based on the data, so the actions and the methods which we have called in the test case, they will be same. So it's a code reusability is there. Data-driven test cases are flexible and easy to maintain. So if you have to modify the steps, you modify at one place. It is applicable for all the data present in the data source. The same test cases are executed several times, which will help to reduce efforts and code. Any changes in the test script do not affect the test data. So you can modify the test cases, and same thing is applicable opposite also. Anything the test data, if we modify, if we increase the number of rows, that will not make any impact on the test script. In MS Test, we use two attributes. One is DataRow and DynamicData. So DataRow attribute is used to define inline data for a test method. You can look at the example wherein I have given a data row. It is having a three fields: first name, last name, and the date of enrollment. You can pass that data directly. Dynamic data. So it's an attribute used to define the dynamic data for a test method. You can look at the example. In that one, I have mentioned a method name. The method name is a getData, and that is the one which supplies the data to this data-driven test case. And we have to mention where is the data source, and the data source is mentioned as method. Let us look into the code demo now. Let's rename the method to something meaningful. I'll give the method name as data-driven testing using DataRow. So we'll add quickly 4 lines of code, which will open the browser, maximize the window, and it will close. I have added the 4 lines of code. Our application under test is UI test practice. We have a URL to create a student record. So in this one, you can see that we have 3 fields and a button: first name, last name, enrollment date, and clicking on the button. So let's inspect the first element. It is having a ID first name. Second one, it's having a last name, and this is enrollment date is having a ID enrollment date, and the button, it is not having any ID, so we will be using the XPath for this. So I'll quickly write the 4 lines of code. through which we can add some data and click on the create button. I have added 4 lines of code which will send the data like Narendra Modi, first name and last name, and the enrollment date will be 01/01/2019, and it will click on that submit button. This is not a data-driven testing. So we are going to convert this normal test case into a data-driven test case using a DataRow. First, let us see how it executes without data-driven testing. Browser has opened and maximized, navigated to that URL, and it is adding the data to the first name, last name, and enrollment date, and clicking on create button. So the test case is passed. This is a typical test method. So how do we convert this method to a data-driven testing is, so how many fields we want? We want first name, last name, and enrollment date. Let us take that data here. So I'll call it as string, ef name, comma string, l name, and string enrollment date. I'll call it as a e date in short. Fine. So now who will supply the data for these 3 parameters? So we have to add an attribute called as DataRow. So here you can provide any number of parameters. For our test case, it is 3 parameters we have to supply, and all these 3 parameters are of string data type. So let me do like this, and we will make a data-driven testing for 3 rows. I'll copy paste this for 3 times. So first data set, I'm giving it as Narendra Modi, and here I'll give 01/01/2019. Second one, I'll give all the data in the lowercase. So I'll use the name Donald Trump, and the date will be, I'll give mid of the date, mid of the year. So I'll give 07/01/2020, and one more row I'll give it as everything in uppercase. So Boris Johnson, and here I'll give the date as the 12th month and 31st date and 2021. Now this data will go to these parameters row by row, and we have to supply those variables here. So this will be f name, this will be l name, and this will be e date. So now I will execute the test case, and what you have to focus here is this is the only one test case but with the 3 different data sets. So when I execute the same test case previously which it ran for only 1 time, now it will run for 3 times for 3 data rows. Executing for first data set. Now executing for a second data set. Now the test case is executing for the third data set. Case is paused. If you look at it, we executed once. The test result you are seeing for 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. These 3 test cases for these 3 data rows. Now we have seen how to write a data-driven test case using DataRow Attribute. So if you want to use the dynamic data, you have to update the MS Test adapter and MS Test framework to the latest version, which is 2.1.2. So I'll update this. I'll update this as well, MS Test framework. I have copied the method from here, I've pasted, and I will change the method name as using dynamic data attribute. So the attribute name is dynamic data. So here I have to provide the method name. So I will use the keyword name of get data. Get data is a method which I have to write. I have not yet written so far. And second parameter I have to mention as how we are accessing, what is the data source, what is providing the data source. So in my case it is dynamic data source type dot method. Okay, it is still showing a red squiggly because we have not yet created the method by the name get data. So I will create that method here. The method syntax has to be public static IEnumerable. So this IEnumerable type is available in the using system.collections. Bring that namespace by pressing a control dot, then you type object of array. So now array object we have to return, and the method name I am going to give it as a get data. So open close flower bracket. So here we have to return a row, something like this. We have written right. So here we have to create an object. Each object is an array of the different parameters. So how do we do? We can say return new object, which is an array, and it will have 3 parameters. Same thing, I can copy paste from here, which will be easy. Second set of data I'm taking from here. And third set of data I'm taking from here. So now we have to use a keyword here called as a yield. So after adding the yield keyword, now the issue is resolved. So all we have not added the data here. The data will be coming from here. Yield keyword keeps track of which record it has returned and the next data. So it goes on as long as how many records are there. After building the project, I got a method data driven testing using dynamic data. If I run this, here the data each time it is taking from a method called as a get data. Browser has launched. It is entering the data now to the form, which is a first record. same test case is getting executed for the second time. The second record is Donald Trump. The browser is opened for the third time, and this time it will enter the third record, which is Boris Johnson. You can see that for this one, using data driven testing using dynamic data, the three test cases are executed. Same test case, but three times with a different data. You can also see how it has executed with the parameters, each time with a different data. The possible interview question on this topic is, what is data-driven testing? Advantages of data-driven testing? What are the attributes used in the data-driven testing? What is DataRow attribute? What is DynamicData attribute? So the following videos, you will see how we can use the CSV files, XML files, xlsx file, database to read the data and conduct the data-driven testing. So the notes used in this video and code is available in the video description below this video. If you have any questions, post the questions in the comment box. If you like this video, consider giving a thumbs up and share our video on social media like Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. Subscribe to our channel if you are not yet subscribed already.